What's going on, everybody? Mortem here. This time bringing you the highlights from the Xbox Games Showcase for 2026 as we start to wrap up all the various showcases that kick off the month of June, showing us what we've got in store for the year. Now, in the case of this particular show, while I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff, I also know that some of the things people wanted to see were definitely missing. No word on the Elder Scrolls 6, not that, in my opinion, it was ever really expected, but I can commiserate with people on wanting news on that particular title, and yet at the same time, we did in fact get a bunch of interesting information and release dates about plenty of other games, which is obviously what we are here to talk about. And in fact, we have quite a few of those games to actually go over and talk about, so we are going to just go ahead and dive into it this time. Kicking it off with Fable. So, the Fable reboot was initially due out this year, but was recently delayed, probably to get out of the way of GTA 6 in all honesty. And while that is a little bit of disappointing news, the Fable update we got at this showcase gave us a bunch of new information, but I would say primarily the release date, which is February 23rd, 2027. Now, the bits they showed also did a little bit of setting up some of the characters, the main sort of antagonist, as well as the return of the Jack of Blades, which, given what happened to him in the first few games, it'll be curious to see what they wind up doing with him as a character. Speaking for myself, however, I'm already pretty pumped for that one. They don't really need to sell me on it any more than they already have with the last bit of information we got around some of the systems and things, so definitely looking forward to it myself, and I'm glad they led the show with that. Now, right after this, we got a look at Halo Campaign Evolved, which is a remake that is coming out on July 28th and is in fact going to include things like 3 new missions, expanding the content that was already there in Combat Evolved. And while I sincerely doubt this is a game I will review for the channel or anything, I have fond memories, like many people, of playing this title with my brothers and whatnot, and so there's a decent chance I'll try to rope them into playing it with me if nothing else. Third up, we had a look at Resonance, A Plague Tale Legacy, which is a prequel to Plague Tale Requiem, I believe. Now, that is coming out on August 27th. I personally am not up to date on the Plague Tale games, but I know they were quite popular with some people, and hopefully this game delivers on it for them as well. It looks like they're going for, I would say, a not insignificant switch in like setting and time, but honestly it looks like a decent action adventure at any rate. Next up on the reveals, we had a look at Persona 4 Revival, which is coming to us February 18th, 2027, and you're going to notice a trend throughout the video that February in particular seems to be a popular release month for 2027. In particular, though, this is a full remake of Persona 4 Golden, which they are billing as a good place for people to jump into the series, while updating things like the visuals, UI, battles, events, all the usual things. Now, I am once again not wildly into Persona, but I know that franchise has its hardcore fan base that I am sure are happy for the news, and that's not the last bit of Persona we have to talk about, yet we'll save it for a minute, because next up we are talking about State of Decay 3. So I thought this reveal was interesting in the sense that the main purpose of it was really to give us the release window of 2027, but that is actually interesting because what we learned about State of Decay 3 not all that long ago was that it was apparently a bit earlier in development than people probably initially thought, based on like interviews and stuff they did after the fact, so it's nice to see that it is not as far out as people may have been concerned about it being, provided it actually hits that 2027 window. Otherwise, they showed off some interesting gameplay here. In particular, it looks like the zombies are going to be taking a more proactive role in like hunting the players down, but I imagine there will be more to talk about there later. I enjoyed State of Decay 2 quite a bit when I played it, and I'm looking forward to 3 for sure. Moving right along, however, next up they had the announcement of Sea of Thieves Season 20, I believe, which is coming out June 18th, which is going to include an editor to allow people to customize things the various which ways they may want to. To be completely honest, as somebody who has not kept up with that game in any capacity, I was a little surprised to see they were still doing stuff for it, and hopefully people are having fun with it. Right after this, we had a look at Metro 2039, also coming out in February of 2027 as it would happen, continuing the Metro series. And the Metro series is just kind of one of those franchises I eventually want to get around to covering, but I am, again, admittedly not wildly up to date on this particular franchise, but it definitely has my interest. In particular, though, this one should be taking place in the Moscow Metro, And apparently the trailer that they put out for it was actual like in-game rendered stuff, so that should be roughly how it looks. Now, following on from that, in an incredibly different tone, we have Bad Magpie, which is supposed to be due out in 2027 as well. And this one I mostly wanted to mention because it reminded me of that like goose game where you go around just like terrorizing people as a goose, except this time you are playing a magpie with an injured wing who has to navigate this town and seemingly terrorize all of the denizens along the way, which was funny if nothing else. I'd be lying if I said I was like super interested in this, but it was a funny trailer at least. In another wildly odd tone shift, we next up had a look at Wolong 2, coming in early 2027 if you would believe it. So Wolong, if you are unaware, was Team Ninja's like more parry-focused title that they've done. It was okay. I didn't love Wolong personally. The DLCs made it better, but never quite got there in my opinion. And compared to what they did with Neo, it just wasn't my favorite. But I do think they have the opportunity here to, of course, kind of address that and perhaps find ways to improve upon that original formula and make that a bit more appealing. So I'm up for it, at least taking a look at it, but we'll see what happens. That said, February 2027 is going to be packed as it is, so hopefully it's not right around then. Our next title was a, I guess, cult simulator called Join Us, coming out in March 2027, where your goal is to rock up to a small town, establish and grow a cult, fighting off both eldritch terrors as well as deranged locals in a game that is going to be emphasizing co-op by the looks of it, but is also going to have a single-player mode available, and it looks just bizarre enough to be interesting. I'd be curious, at least in terms of this title for me, is how much like single player campaign content is there, because if it's just like a wacky open world type of thing where the narrative isn't the focus so much as the silly things you're getting up to, then it's whatever. But I could see this kind of game being more appealing to me if it actually has like a well done single player campaign, so to speak. But we'll see what happens. Not entirely sold on that one, I just thought it was neat. Right after that, we got a game just titled Senua, and of course that's the latest entry in the Hellblade series, I believe, which is also due out in 2027, and is going to be doubling roughly the map from Hellblade 2, as well as trying to incorporate more verticality into the title, which I know because they dropped an Xbox Wire post about it afterwards and gave a little bit more information worth knowing. Reaching close to the halfway point, we then had a quick look at Fallout 76, which was mostly just a showcase for its Infestations update, which I believe is out like right now. My only interest for Fallout 76 is that I plan to review it sometime this summer as a small spoiler for my own schedule, I guess, and while it won't be at 100% or anything, I do kind of want to finally jump in and see what that game is all about, and we will be doing so over the course of this summer. Keeping in time with Bethesda, however, next up we had a look at Doom the Dark Ages and its upcoming DLC, Revelations, due out on July 7th. This one is going to be bringing some new mechanics and everything to, of course, Doom the Dark Ages, but that was a really fun experience for me personally, and it looks like one of the main things they're doing here is adding this new chain spear, which allows you to like grapple around and get a little more airborne with your combos and everything, while also, of course, expanding the story that was told with Doom the Dark Ages a bit. And so I'm looking forward to this one. I had a lot of fun with the Dark Ages, and ripping and tearing my way through some enemies sounds like a good time come July, especially since July isn't too packed right now, so that should be a pretty good release date for it. Our next title was in fact a rebooted Crazy Taxi, due out in 2027 sometime, in particular Crazy Taxi World Tour. Keeping in line with the title, we will of course be driving a taxi crazily as we attempt to deliver people to their destinations, facing all sorts of challenges and the like along the way, as you would probably expect from a game like this. And perhaps unsurprisingly, in 2026, people immediately jumped on this one for having used Gen AI in the creation of some of the assets, apparently, which we learned about through the AI declaration over on the Steam page, so feel how you want about that. I'm not wild about Crazy Taxi anyway, so it's not something I'm going to get too up in arms about, but worth noting, I suppose. And then we have Age of Empires 4 and its upcoming expansion due out in fall of this year, which is going to be a Viking-themed one, if you were looking for a little bit more of that type of gameplay. Right after this, we had a look at Minecraft Dungeons 2, which is going to be due out in September of this year, and while that is unlikely to be a game that I cover on the channel personally, it is the type of game I would buy specifically to play with my young son, as he would definitely be into it, which is pretty much my entire reasoning for having mentioned it here, but you know, it's Minecraft Dungeons, I don't know what to tell you. Now this next game was actually of great interest to me. It was called Magicians, the Devil's Deal, also due out in 2027. This one sees you playing a magician who was betrayed by fellow magicians, who ultimately saw you being sentenced to eternal damnation in hell, only for the devil himself to give you an out by basically giving you the opportunity to hunt down the magicians that put you here in the first place, with, I would have to say, a setup that sounds like the only real winner is in fact the devil. In all seriousness though, this seems like a really cool premise. I enjoyed what gameplay they showed of it, and while some of like the first person animations with the arms and stuff look a little stiff, that's a bit of a nitpick, I admit, and I am genuinely excited to see what they wind up doing with this one. Following on from this, we got the proper demo for Valor Mortis, which is due out September 24th. And as a channel that goes by Mortem most of the time, Valor Mortis is of interest to me, if only for that reason. But in particular, if you don't know, Valor Mortis is like a first-person Souls-like type thing that had a playtest not all that long ago that I covered, which seemed pretty interesting. So in addition to this announcement, they dropped a demo that is running through, I believe, the rest of the month. I will actually be covering that in a couple of days. I've got a couple things I have to get to first, but I do plan on taking a look at more of that for myself, as it puts you in France around the time of Napoleon and everything, with like Bioshock-esque powers as you do this Souls-like adventure, and so interesting, I suppose. Then we got a couple of smaller updates back to back. Elder Scrolls Online is getting its Thieves Guild revamp on July 8th, which is going to set up for like heists and things like that if you are still playing ESO. It's been a little while since I played that one personally, and if I'm not mistaken, they overhauled a bunch of systems not all that long ago, so I'm not entirely sure what they're up to these days. I'd have to jump in and kind of get a feel for it, but the Elder Scrolls Online is always one of those games that I enjoyed more with what they did with like the story and lore of the Elder Scrolls stuff, more so than the actual gameplay, admittedly. Then we had a quick look at a Microsoft Flight Simulator update, in particular showing off some areas in the United States, which is due out on July 4th, probably to coincide with the 250th anniversary of the country, and there's supposed to be like a racing update to follow that a couple months later. Where Winds Meet, a very bizarre title, is also getting an update come July that is promising some new features and things, and I know how big that game was when it initially launched, so I'm curious to see how it's doing these days and if it can sustain any of that, I suppose. But then we got back to some of the larger stuff. There was a big announcement for Castlevania Belmont's Curse, which is celebrating the 40th anniversary of Castlevania. In particular, this one is out on October 15th, 2026, not too much longer to go. It is a side-scrolling Castlevania title, much in the way of the older ones, and looks like it'll be a lot of fun for the people who love that franchise. But then we got a really big announcement in the form of Persona 6. In that it was announced, not a ton of details beyond that, outside of course, like the trailer and everything they used to announce the game. But we don't have a release date, release window, or really much information of all to talk about, and so Persona 6 is coming. There's that information for you, I suppose. Our next title is a sequel for Spyro, known as Spyro: A Realm Beyond, which is coming spring of 2027. This is another game I think my son will likely enjoy, and I'll probably take a look at it if only for that, because while I played the original trilogy when I was a kid, I have not taken a look at the revamped version they put out not too long ago. But either way, looks like a fun entry into that franchise. And then we have Clockwork Revolution, one of our bigger ones to close out the showcase with, which received a release window of 2027 as well. After being a little standoffish about giving a date, we at least got a window now. Beyond that, the showcase for Clockwork Revolution showed off a bunch of different characters and some of the gameplay elements. It went a little more in-depth on the time travel mechanic that is supposed to be taking place here, and a few of the RPG elements and like skill checks, things like that. So nothing truly groundbreaking, but I'm hoping that here before too long we'll be able to talk about this game in full when it releases in 2027. Very excited to see what inXile is up to and how this game pans out, as I really enjoyed Wasteland 3. Just a tremendous CRPG, and I'm hoping Clockwork Revolution lands for them. And then to wrap up the actual showcase, before they moved on to the Gears of War E-Day thing, we had Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, which was primarily focused on the DMZ mode in the game, which is a type of extraction shooter thing for it, in addition to all the regular stuff. But that game is due out on October 23rd, I believe, if you are big into Call of Duty, though admittedly I haven't played any of those in forever, so another situation where I'm not really up to date on it by any means. And while that was technically the end of the showcase, we do have one more game to talk about, which is of course Gears of War, which got its own big E-Day Direct, which was a big look at everything going on with that particular title. So there was a lot of information there, and if you want all the details, I would imagine you would probably want to go watch that in particular. The big news there really is that that is going to be coming out on October 6th, 2026, and they're going to start having open betas starting, I believe, in August as well, which I would imagine is going to focus on things like the updated game modes they're talking about. Like one of them is like this 12-player PvE thing, and naturally introducing all sorts of new weapons and the like. But that is nonetheless where the showcase ended. So overall, I would say there were plenty of games there to be interested in. A handful I will definitely be reviewing. I would say of all of these, Fable is obviously the one I am personally the most interested in. The Magician's Deal one was pretty neat, but there's also a couple smaller titles in there. I'm excited to see if they actually manage to amount to anything. But as for today, I do think that is pretty much going to do it, as we took a look at everything they covered here. So hopefully you enjoyed all of that. If you did, by all means, let me know how you feel about it down in the comments section below. I'd love to know if any of these games spoke to you in particular, which naturally means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.